We're here at the Brickyard for the second race of the rFactor 2 Summer Showdown. We had an awesome race last week in the stock cars, and we're now moving to another form of American racing. We are in the Indy cars here for the rF250. We've got an amazing venue, got an amazing car, and a really cool style of racing. Oval racing is not overly common in the rFactor 2 scene, but we are trying to get a little bit closer to that maybe for the future as well. And this is a really good opportunity to showcase the abilities of some of these drivers during this race that we're going to have later on this evening. So myself, Cameron Roger, today, and joining me is Ewan O'Leary. And Ewan, we've had a little bit of experience together from oval racing in the past, but I think this one today is going to be a little bit special.
Yeah, I think it is. It's a great mix of different drivers. As you said, we've got a fantastic car, and it's always a great event. The Indy 500 is in real life, and any racing around here on the oval I think is great anyway. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. Lots of people who we've not seen before, and looking forward to seeing how they actually get on. And then lots of people who I do know, and it's still going to be interesting to see where they're at the moment as well. So it's very, very difficult to pick a winner in these kind of events, and they're the kind of best ones really. When it's unpredictable, you don't really know what's going to happen, and that just makes for entertaining viewing. That's what we're all here for, of course.
Yeah, we certainly are. And with oval racing, there's all these different variables, and you're going to see lap times within thousandths of a second of each other. And during the qualification process over the previous week, there were certainly some very close lap times indeed, and certain bigger names that you may expect, such as Michi Hoyer. He had a fairly up and down race with the stock cars last week, but he isn't in this top split. He was only in the second split, I believe. But Eunice Rivio, who won the Stock Car Challenge last week, he did manage to get into the top split, so you'll be seeing him in just a few minutes' time as well, along with a bunch of other drivers who you probably would have heard of from some other rFactor 2 competitions, but also there'll be some names that you don't know. But that is just the way with oval racing. The qualification format, it was still done in the similar way of simply getting your best lap time, and with it being a flat-out four-corner oval, there aren't really too many places you're going to lose time, and I think that's going to keep the field really close during this race.
Absolutely, slipstreams is a massive thing, and obviously like the battling and the kind of weaving around to get your own bit of track space is very important as well. So it's just going to be very, very exciting to watch, certainly. And also going through those corners, you say that there's not many places to lose time here, only four corners, and they're not the most difficult corners in the world, I think it's fair to say. But when you're following other cars, when you're in a pack of cars, it can be very difficult to follow, and obviously you don't want to misjudge it because there's a wall on the outside and you don't want to spin either. It is very, very different, and it's just good to watch. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. 25 drivers, as you mentioned, 250 miles. And we're in for a good race, certainly, even though we're missing a couple of, as you mentioned, Hoyer's not in the top split for whatever reason. It wasn't able to get in there, but it's going to be exciting, certainly, we'll see how they get on.
So 250 miles on a 2.5 mile oval means 100 laps of this track, and the lap goes by very quickly. It's around 40 seconds in race trim. So in theory, the race should be somewhere around maybe 70 minutes or so, but we do have full course yellows. So we do have Jimmy Allison in race control, and if there is going to be sort of a massive accident or pile up, the drivers will then go into what we know from other races as a code 80 situation, but instead for the oval it'll be a code 200, so everyone will have to slow down to 200 kilometers an hour. Then obviously once the situation is resolved, they will go back green racing, and those cautions are going to be very crucial with the fuel calculations, but we'll get into that a bit later on. So here is the calendar. We started off with the Stock Car Challenge last weekend with the Stock Car 2018X, so the sort of the younger baby brother. and that was at Portland. Today we're going for the rF250 at Indianapolis. As we mentioned, 100 laps, so that's going to be quite a grueling test indeed. And then in a couple of weeks' time, we head to the Nürburgring Nordschleife for a 60-minute race in GT3 cars as well. So an awesome summer schedule here for the rFactor 2 Summer Showdown, obviously in partnership with Traction.gg as well. And I think these next couple of races are going to be a lot of excitement.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good calendar, really, for a kind of short mini season. Well, it's not really a season, is it? Because we're not counting points or anything like that. He's not battling for championship standings and things like that. So it's all out of the window. However, it's just good to have these fun little races going on at the moment. Especially looking forward to the Nürburgring race in a couple of weeks' time, because I think that circuit is very, very nice indeed. But here's Yunus Rabio, by the way, who won the StockCar race last week at Portland. He's going to be looking for another good performance here tonight. He's qualified fourth for this race, and he'll be behind the likes of Adam Maguire, Liam Duval and Mark De Vries, who's leading the field away for this one. I'm sure we'll have a full rundown of the grid before we get underway here for 100 laps of racing. Qualifying was exceptionally close, up and down, up and down the order. In 20th place, Sean Jones is only 1/10 behind the pole sitter, and I know this is a very short lap, and there's not much really to choose between the drivers in terms of actually driving around here, but it still is very, very close. And that means that there's going to be people getting big slipstream, lots of slipstream going on. It's going to keep the field very close together. Hopefully minimal incidents, but there's bound to be a few. Most of all, close racing.
Yeah, close racing is, I think, what we're going to see here. As you mentioned, the lap times are very close because it is, even in race trim, when you're on your own especially, you're pretty much going to be going flat out around the whole track, which means there's not really anywhere you can actually lose time specifically. So that the balancing act of that is going to be very important when we get further into the race and we're in sort of a pack racing situation, because you really have to judge that throttle management when you get into a dirty air situation, because normally you're just used to going flat out all the time. So in those dirty air situations, you want to lose as little amount of time as possible, because it's very difficult to then gain that back, because there's not much you can physically do. So hopefully we can try that out. But earlier we mentioned about the fuel strategy. So the fuel goes for roughly 40 laps, give or take. There are engine mixtures, so they will be able to save fuel, but also with the slipstream as well. But that means we're looking at pretty much a 2-stop race. You're going to have to make at least 2 pit stops to get to the end, and where you do that and how that works is very important, because if you do a full 40-lap stint on tyres, then you are going to be a lot slower at the end of your stint.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a big game, really, and it's something we talk about in endurance racing a little bit more, really, catching a code 200 at the right time, so that you can actually make your pit stop maybe while we're going a little bit slower. There's going to be no caution, no bunching up of the field, certainly, but we may see a code 200 where you can take advantage of that to get almost a free pit stop in a way, you can save yourself a lot of time. But there's this kind of, as you mentioned, 2-stop race, but there's this kind of odd 20 laps kind of in the middle, and you don't. A lot of people are going to be thinking, what do I do with this? Because, it doesn't quite add up quite right, does it? 40s don't really go into 100 perfectly. So there's going to be this odd 20-lap stint somewhere that these guys are going to have to figure out. But here's the starting grid.
Yes, we've got Mark De Vries on pole position, followed by Liam Duval, Yunus Rabio. So Adam Maguire hasn't showed up because he qualified originally in 3rd place. Then onto the second page, we've got Michael Ayres and Alejandro Lopez there in 6th place, followed by Mohamed Patel and Michaela D'Alessandro. So there's certainly some names that you would have heard of before at the top of this field. Then we got Chiara there in 9th, followed by Gaia, Hutchinson and Jake Denahan there in 12th place. And obviously with these icons, they do have the road course package, but obviously we are racing with the oval lower downforce package. Then we got Andre Caneo, Apolloni and Zuev in 16th place. Then 17th we got Fernando Alvarez, followed by Sean Jones and Brian in 19th and Fabian Balla in 20th place. And then on the final few rows of the grid, we've got Edo Hakimi, Vincent Keersmakers, Gerrit de Vries there in 24th place. And then I believe we have a 25th driver as well on the final page. But we will now jump to this awesome camera. So we've actually got 3 onboard cameras, or 3 potential screens, I should say, to see. And then we will see how many onboards we can get during the race. I'm sure we're going to see a lot of battling, but Mark de Vries is going to be coming around the final corner to start the race. And when he does, it's going to be an incredible night of racing, 100 laps. And when we get the green flag, he will be able to go. But I believe there is going to be a warm-up lap or so. Well, actually, no, we're racing. Sorry, we apologise. We are racing now. And Liam Duval is getting underway, trying to get in that slipstream. There's been a big crash on that third screen. Absolutely massive crash. There's going to be a few drivers down there. And Liam Duval now getting that slipstream to the inside. But is he going to be able to hold it down the inside? It's going to be very difficult for these drivers to actually stay side by side, because you eventually just lose so much time, and then you just get freight trained by all of the cars behind. But it seems it's been a fairly clean start at the front.
Full course caution.
Looks like we're going to get a full course caution immediately here in a few moments' time. We're not even 2 corners of racing able to get in before we see our first incident. I believe about 11, 9, 10, 11, kind of that region of cars involved in the accident, and that is a real shame to see. It was a very, very hefty one, though. We saw with an onboard camera on the very right-hand side of your screen, and yeah, there won't be many. Look at the amount of pieces of bodywork on the side of the road as well. Very, very difficult to pick your way through that almost. But yeah, we're under a full course caution kind of thing at the moment to kind of slow down the field. But yeah, that was a very, very big crash at turn 2, and yeah, I'm not entirely sure if anybody was at fault, if it was just one of those things going into the first few corners, but a lot of people have been affected by it.
Yeah, it's not the nicest thing in the world when you get involved in an accident. And you see it was actually coming into turn 2, that yellow car and the green one as well. Oh, and then this is actually one of the things you see there. Once he got onto the brakes, you just go for a spin yourself, and there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cars involved there. So that is not the best start for these guys. And unfortunately, that is just what happens. The cars, you set them up to basically naturally turn left, so that's why you see the cambers are all faced towards the inside of the track, and also with the way the springs and dampers will be set up, you're really coming to really having the car turn to the left. And we're going to be going to the green flag at the end of the next lap, but hopefully Gaia and Co can get back into the race.
It's going to be a fairly long stop for those guys, and they're going to be a lap down, maybe 2, but yeah, at least they'll still be able to continue on with the race. But yeah, good start from Liam Duval actually to be able to get up into the lead. De Vries and Ravio not too far behind, Ayres and Patel as well inside the top 5, and a couple of pit stops being made, but I don't think there's any strategic point in going for a pit stop at this point. I mean, you know, you said a moment ago these cars aren't designed to do anything other than turn left. They're not really designed to slow down either. It's going to be a big talking point when we do get pit stops. Slowing down for these pit stops is a real problem. But we're coming up towards the line once again. We're coming up towards the green flag as well.
3, 2,
We're going to go green again. We've still got a couple of drivers there in the pit lane. But now let's see what Liam Duval can do. He's got De Vries behind him, followed by Jonas Raivio as well. And they've managed to pull a little bit of gap there to Michael Ayres in 4th place. Got Caneo getting a penalty, so he's going to have to come back in. And now this is where we're going to see how good is the slipstream. Is it able to overtake it, especially when they're still trying to get back up to speed? It'll take them a good 2 or 3 laps. It seems that Raivio is going to be trying to get that slipstream down onto turn 3, but I think he's actually going to be lifting out of that one to try and sit behind, and then just getting off the line a little bit, trying to stay out of that dirty air.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very, very difficult to follow other cars going through these corners, and that's what we're experiencing on board with Jonas Raivio at the moment. One of the cars smoking in the pit lane there. There's some very long stops going on for some of these guys, but finally getting up to speed just a little bit. Liam Duval with a 42.1 there, not quite up to full speed just for the moment, but not too far off of it. And we do have 3 for the lead right now as the battle for 5th is going on right now between Ayres, who restarted this race in 4th place, but he seems to be under a lot of pressure now from Darius Andre, who's going to, or defending on the inside and staying in front just for the moment. Just D'Alessandro and Velthove also here. Ciara as well, not too far behind. Good battling going on a little bit further down.
It seems D'Alessandro there ended up losing that position, which just shows you how sort of careful you have to be in these battling situations. There is obviously 100 laps and you need to make sure you're getting yourself to the end. Battling, sometimes you just have to let the other person go past to avoid any sort of collisions. It is more of almost an endurance race aspect, or endurance mentality, I should say, that you have to come into this with. It is so easy, as you already saw in turn 2, so easy to make a little bit of a mistake and have a big crash. So the whole point is staying in the race, getting towards the end, and that's a lot easier for these guys at the front, as De Vries now is trying to get on the back of Deval, but it seems Deval's got a very fast car.
Does indeed, leading at the moment, and it doesn't seem to be showing any signs of giving up for the moment, because he seems to be very, very quick indeed. But side by side, just a little bit between Velthove and Andre there as well. Andre keeping that position just for the moment, defending well. Not the greatest run out of turn 2 though, and now Velthove is going to go to the outside again, and he's going to try the move again into turn 3. We've seen this before, but wasn't able to pull it off on the outside line. The inside is the shorter way around and the better way around, quite clearly, because even though Velthove seemingly has better pace, he just can't get through for the moment. He won't be let down the inside, will he? Andre's going to cover that inside as much as possible, because without the inside line, there's almost no way through.
Oh, it's side by side now around the outside. That's going to be a very difficult position to put yourself in. You don't want the person on the inside to just understeer up wide. That is getting yourself in a very scary situation. And this was open setup, so there's going to be different wing levels. There's going to be different downforce situations as well. But once again, Velthove is trying to go around the outside of turn 3. This is probably one of the most awkward corners to do so. For whatever reason, the corners do have their slight nuances. They're not exactly the same, but now he does a bit of a switch over and he's going to get down the inside with those. He's not going to have loads of slipstream, but he's going to have the track position now down the inside to turn number 1. Can he get the car positioned down the inside? Andre is going to hold it around the outside once again. He's doing a very good job defending.
There he is indeed, really doing a fantastic job to hold off of all these guys. And Velthove's got to be a little bit careful here, because D'Alessandro and Ciara are both here as well, ready to capitalise on any kind of problems that he may have, and Michele D'Alessandro may try and stick one down the inside into turn 3 this time, but he decides not to, and it just decides to stick behind for now. This is costing them all time though, let's not forget, and those guys like Apolloni and Lopez behind Hutchinson as well, they're all catching on. And if you just look at the gap to the leaders, Liam Deval is now nearly 8 seconds up the road. Just finally down the inside goes Velthove. He's been trying to get this all the time, but now he's finally got the inside line. Into the outside wall goes Darius Andre. Clearly not used to running around on that particular line. These two getting very aggressive now, and D'Alessandro is going to want a piece of this. Might even get both of them in one move.
He needs to be careful outside of the situation. Outside of this situation, not great situation to be in. And it seems that Andre there doing a bit of bump drafting, but Velthove has been able to get through there finally. Difficult situation, but I do think there's a bit of damage on that car of Andre. And now D'Alessandro getting down the inside. 90 laps to go, 10 laps completed, and D'Alessandro is getting back up there into 7th place. And although Andre's actually coming around the outside, so he's obviously still in a good place with his car, but D'Alessandro manages to hold on to that.
Does indeed, and it hits that curb a little bit hard at turn 2, so that wasn't the best line. But Andre now really getting swamped by everybody. Oh, Ciara and also Apolloni trying to get involved. 3 wide going towards turn 3 at the moment. Apolloni just backs off for the moment. A little bit careless from him as well to bump into everybody trying to get through there, but everybody got away with it in the end. And I don't think that was too out of order from him, but it just needs to be a little bit careful and remember that there are still 89 laps to go at the end of this one. But Ciara now gets finally to the inside. Darius Andre has been pushed to the outside again. Just remember a couple of laps ago he was hanging it around the outside at turn 1, hit the outside wall and may have received a tiny bit of damage because of that, and maybe suffering because of that right now. But Ciara is now through. Andre has dropped from 6th place down to 9th in very short order. He might be about to drop to 10th.
Oh, you see the tyre smoke there as well, which means he's just gone off that line a little bit. The tyres are really trying to hold on around the outside. A bit of contact there. They've got to be careful. That's going to put him in the wall. Oh, he manages to keep it out of the wall, does Andrew. So Apolloni, once again, on the inside. The driver's going to get so close. I remember this is well over 360 kilometers an hour. There's going to be a bit of contact there. Can he keep out the wall? No, the car in the background can't. Andre bumps onto the wall, and he's going to have a bit of damage from that, unfortunately. You can see on the outside he's got some black all over his car, and he's going to be overtaken by a couple of these cars as well.
Absolutely, it's just one of those things, and really kind of sneak up. I think it was Mika Hakimi, wasn't it? Or maybe Lopez, not entirely sure. But yeah, it kind of snuck up on everybody, really, and maybe caught a few people off guard, as Andre might be trying to get in the pit lane right now, and he does indeed. Definitely got some damage after all of this, as he breaks now for the pit line. Does fairly well, actually, to get it all slowed down, but it's not got any karma, really. In the background, flying through the middle goes Edu, trying to go around the outside of Lopez right now into turn one, and he's actually made that stick there, has he? Lopez still on the inside line, so he has got the advantage just for the moment. They go through turn two, battling once again, but yeah, this is one of the more exciting battles out on the circuit as well. Nearly four wide going towards turn three right now.
Oh, these cars in the background, got to be so careful with the mega overspeed that you get in these situations, as we're on board with Alvarez getting past Lopez, and also Mika Hakimi. He started way down in sort of 22nd place. He's already up now into 13th, and it does seem that Alvarez was a bit sort of erratic with his steering. Needs to be careful with that, as these cars can get. Oh, look at this. Lopez all the way down the inside, does back out of it just a little bit too late, and understeers there into Andri. You see, when you get that sort of double slipstream from a few car lengths back, you just have, 10, 15, 20 Ks quicker, and you have to be really careful to slow down for the corners.
Yeah, you really do. I mentioned it a little bit earlier on about the dirty air coming through these corners, and that's exactly what we saw there, really. A lot of understeer for Lopez. Didn't intend to go steaming into the car on the outside so aggressively there, but it's just the way that things happened in the end because of the understeer that he experienced. But now into the pit lane, he's surely got a bit of damage after that hit on the wall, because it was fairly high speed and it was a fairly hard hit as well. If he can save enough fuel, then he might be able to make it to the end on just one more stop here, but after only 15 laps pitting in, definitely not where you want to be. But lap traffic is now starting to become a factor. Liam Duval right now is catching up to the back of the field. There's plenty of cars many laps down already. We've still got all the cars actually still running, but Denham is quite a lot of laps down now, so Liam Duval has got to negotiate the traffic nice and cleanly, and it's not F1 blue flag rules, is it? It's completely, I think, correct blue flag rules where you have to kind of make your own way through, and Liam Duval shouldn't have any problems doing that. He just needs to do it cleanly.
Always were cars getting out of his way there. That's rather nicer than going down that sort of pit entry. And yeah, this is the point of the race where you can really start to lose some time. Even if the car ahead lets you go, it can be a little bit awkward. You might have to lift out of it just a little bit more than you want to, and it can really put you off. So you have to be careful with that one, because you don't want to be making any sort of excessive mistake that could cost you a position. Well, you see now De Vries caught up quite a lot there in turn two. I wonder if Duval's sort of overheating his tyres just a little bit. And he's starting to get a bit of a slipstream as we go three wide with the top three of the field so far. Rygo's drops off these guys just a little bit, but he's still in contention.
Yeah, he is indeed. He's just fallen away. And I thought actually when he did lose the slipstream that he was in big trouble actually, but it's not like losing the slipstream at Daytona, for example. It is a little bit easy to recover from. That's a dive down the inside from Liam Duval and straight into the wall for the race leader. And now Mark De Vries, who slipped his way down the inside through turn two as well, takes advantage. So having punched a hole through the lap traffic, Liam Duval now is going to be under pressure from Mark De Vries, who's really getting in the slipstream of him, looking to the outside line right now, but he can't make his way around there. Also, now Eunice Rabio is in on the party.
Yeah, that's exactly what can happen with some traffic, and you just let these cars behind bunch up, but you've got to be careful to not sort of overreact in these situations. Duval, he had a bit of contact with the wall, but it seems like his car's going fairly well for now. He just needs to get back in a bit of a rhythm and not let this snowball like we saw some drivers like Andre earlier. You get overtaken by one driver, then all of a sudden all these cars coming through. So Duval, just needs to make sure that he's holding on to that good position, as we now have Mohammed Patel getting on the back of Rivio as well there for third and fourth place. Mohammed Patel getting that slipstream. He's sort of stayed under the radar so far in his first pass of the race, but he's now going down the inside of turn number 3. Rivio lets him go.
Yeah, he does indeed, not choosing to fight that one just for the moment. Now, we're about to complete lap 20, by the way. He said earlier that these pit stop windows, the fuel mileage is about 40 laps per stint, so maybe somebody is going to make a strategic pit stop before long, because we are at that point where you can do this stop and then make another one and easily make it to the end of the race. But it's absolutely fantastic to have 4 for the lead right now. We saw Patel and Rivio a little bit further away from these guys a little bit earlier on, but that was only a couple of cars in traffic. Just imagine lapping a whole load of new cars up in front right now for Liam Duval. I can spot 3, 4, 5 cars in front of Duval at the moment and not too far away from being lapped, so it's about to get very, very exciting for the lead.
Yeah, it certainly will, but that a hit on the wall for Duval seemed to be a fairly nice for him, as we've actually got Rivio coming back now for third place. Is Patel going to let him go on the inside? Yes, he is, so that is going to be a nice position back for him. But these top 4 have actually pulled away quite a lot. Veldhoven, he's dropped off now some 7 seconds, and as you mentioned, that's so difficult to actually just get back over the course of the race. He's going to have to try something with the strategy, or maybe a future code 200. We will have to find out. But yeah, those guys are going to be trying to, or at least these top 4 are going to be trying to keep that gap and have a battle at the front for themselves.
Yeah, now it's the top 2 are going to want to keep that battle or keep that gap margin for themselves, because they've kind of got away a little bit from Yunus Rivio and Mohammed Patel, as we're going to see a bit of a replay of Yunus Rivio's move on the inside of Mohammed Patel into turn 1. It looks fairly easy as you like, really. Down the inside he goes. Patel didn't really put up much of a fight, to be honest, but doesn't need to with nearly 80 laps still remaining. Michael Ayres, by the way, come into the pit lane on the last lap, so first roll of the dice in terms of the strategy. Clearly he's kind of limiting himself in that way, because there's only a set number of laps where he can pit from now on for his final pit stop, so that has limited him slightly in that respect, but you never know, he could get a little bit lucky with the way this strategy works, and getting out of the battles that he was in may help him as Liam Duval gets through on another bit of traffic. Mark De Vries seemingly held up a little bit more by that one.
It's Michael Ayres is actually DNF there, P18. Bit of a shame from him, obviously having some issues in that race, and some people have already made up loads of positions. Hakimi is up into 12th, Mark Hutchinson up there in 9th place as well, so some moves getting done by those guys. And I should say, on the fuel strategy, you really want to be going as far as you can, because you want to basically give yourself as many options later down in the race. If you pit now, you get yourself so limited on the strategy, as we just hit the 1/4 mark. And we're going to see from Rivio here going down onto that curb into turn 4. Oh, someone hits the barrier on the outside and makes contact with Rivio's car there.
Yeah, carbon fibre and pieces of bodywork flying all through the air. Thankfully this is virtual, because that could have been quite nasty in real life. But yeah, it's one of the dangers. The walls are very, very close, and you don't want to misjudge it, although you do want to get the maximum speed out of your car. It's a very fine line to be balancing, and Mark De Vries there just overstepping what is possible ever so slightly. Saw the kiss on the wall coming out of turn 4 there. Will have slightly hampered his run down into turn 1, as we've got a yellow flag out on the course somewhere at the moment. Unsure as to who's actually off the road at the moment, but a bit of an update on Michael Ayres, by the way, who did come in for what I thought was an early pit stop, but unfortunately it was to retire that car.
Yeah, he obviously had a bit of an issue there, which is a bit unfortunate. But now this battle for second place is actually heating up a little bit. Rivio, he's pulled away from Patel, and he's now trying to get on the back of De Vries. Obviously easier said than done, as we've already mentioned. But it seems that these battles, gaps I should say, are just yo-yoing a little bit as they try and work themselves out. The tyres will definitely get used by the end of the stint. They will certainly be that a little bit slower, and that's offset a little bit by the weights going down. But you'll certainly be struggling more as we get towards the end of the stint. So we'll start to see in the next sort of 10 laps who is using their tyres more, and if they're going to start losing some positions.
Yeah, I think Untitled has been holding something back a little bit in this first part of the race, because now, well, earlier on we saw him almost lose the slipstream to Mark de Vries and Liam Duval up front, but now you see him being much more aggressive on the back of the car in front. And I think that that's a little something that he's held back, he's now starting to use, or Mark de Vries has just gone out a little bit too quickly and now he's starting to maybe suffer from that slightly. But yeah, Untitled is certainly coming into his own, whatever's happening at the moment, getting quite close to the wall on the exit of turn 2. But Mohammed Patel is not too far behind him, actually, just on the back routes of this shot. And there he goes on the left-hand side. I thought he was closing in from the timing tower on the left-hand side. And there you go, Mohammed Patel straight through. And yeah, there wasn't too much of an argument about that.
Yeah, he just sent it down the inside there. And the cool thing when you get into that sort of situation is you don't really lose that much time, but the car next to you, the rival, is actually going to come back here into turn 1, but has to back out of it. But yeah, Patel wouldn't have lost much time there diving it down the inside, but Rivio obviously did. So it's a way of sort of making your opponent lose a little bit of time. And let's see from Michael Ayres.
Oh, that was the carbon, well, some of the carbon fibre certainly that we may have seen. This is what happened at turn 4. Maybe clipped the curb, just gets a little bit oversteer. Yeah, just lost the rear end ever so slightly, and very good avoidance from the car behind there, by the way, to be able to get out of that one. But yeah, when you just lose the car like that, these are so difficult to control. You know, you've got to keep it going on the straight and narrow, otherwise that really is it for you in these cars. You really can't save them, you know, unlike in quite a lot of other cars, really, where you can kind of do a bit of a four-wheel drift, a bit of oversteer, a power slide maybe, and get away with it. At these speeds, with these cars, and look at the skinny rear wings as well, there's just absolutely no way you can save things like that. And unfortunately, that's exactly what happened to Michael Ayres. Slammed into the outside wall, and I'm afraid that's the end of this race, end of his race, excuse me. So a shame for him, but very easy to do.
Yeah, these cars are also slightly naturally understeery. So when you get into that situation, you can't sort of turn yourself back into the track. Once you get off that line, you're just going wide and into the wall. And obviously, in his case, obviously it was the rear coming around a little bit as well. So there was literally nothing that he could have really done to save that car. So yeah, a bit unfortunate for him, because he was looking fairly good towards the top there. But unfortunately, that's what happens when you come over racing. It is so much more difficult, just so much closer to the limit in your average situation, and you really have room for zero mistakes.
Absolutely, and I'll say it quite a lot really, but the walls are just so close around here. You know, you might think, you know, well, walls are so close at a street circuit, so why is it any different as Mohammed Patel gets down the inside of Mark de Vries, by the way, into second place? He's having a good drive at the moment, but the thing with street circuits is that they're often not going as quickly as this right now. I mean, this is seriously quick, over 200 miles an hour constantly throughout a race, and yeah, you just don't really see that at street circuits at any point really. So it's exceptionally challenging as we've seen so far this race. But Mohammed Patel is making good progress. He didn't qualify great, to be honest, and he didn't have a great start either. Started 8th here today, and didn't make up too many positions off of the start. Wasn't involved in the lap 1 incident, fortunately, but still didn't make up any positions in that particular altercation. So he's done very well to kind of work his way through the field, and definitely showing himself to have a very good race car throughout tonight.
Yeah, the race car situation is actually a good point indeed, because the qualifying was open for quite a few days last week, so they would have been tailoring the car to qualifying, where you want a very specific type of car. Then when you get into the race, you need something a lot more forgiving. So let's see here with Mohammed Patel. He's going to go actually it was Mark de Vries having a bit of the mistake there, I apologise. And now it was Mohammed Patel getting that really big run, because de Vries had to get out of it, lost that speed down the straight, and now Mohammed Patel, they're getting past, because momentum is a really big factor, because as we said, you don't really lose time in the corners, so when you do, you sort of have a knock-on effect all the way down the next straight.
Yeah, absolutely, and the straights are fairly long around here, as you well know. So, yeah, these mistakes really are amplified until you can get into the next set of turns, where you might be able to recover from it. But yeah, I thought it was quite a way back. It was about this distance, Mohammed Patel, maybe a little bit further back. But yeah, he's not able to do it with slipstream alone. A mistake was needed, as Edu is into the pit lane right now. We've got to be getting close to lap number 40, where we will see a lot of guys going down pit lane, and this is going to be one of the most interesting parts of the race, not only because of all the strategic elements that we will have to talk about, but slowing these cars down for the pit entry is an absolute mission. And if you're able to do it, then well done. And if not, then many before have also spun around in this car, because as you mentioned earlier, they're just designed to go quickly and turn left. They're not designed to turn right and or slow down. So yeah, it's very, very tricky indeed to get these cars onto the pit lane, but that's exactly what these guys are going to have to attempt to do in a few laps.
Yeah, they certainly are. As you mentioned, the cars naturally go left for one, but then they've also got literally zero downforce on the car, and then because you've just been going flat out for the last 40 minutes, you've also got absolutely stone cold brakes. So there's all sorts of factors as to why you have potential issues coming into the pit lane, but hopefully these drivers can sort it out. And you know, lap 40 is sort of a rough number. Some of these drivers, if they're going absolutely flat out, they might have to pit a couple of laps earlier. But also, if they have been smart with their fuel mixtures, then they might be able to go way more than that. And that is going to be quite a critical factor for the points of this race. As Jonas Raivio there sets a new best time of a 39.6, which, for reference, would have just had him in the second split. Would have had him about 26th in the qualification.
That's still impressive though, considering that we're in the race right now, and yeah, it's a whole different set of situations that we're in right now, instead of just trying to go quickly independently. So yeah, that is impressive pace to be going on with just for the moment. Liam Duval still leading though, with Mohammed Patel very close behind. You get the feeling that these two are very, very well matched indeed right now, and we just need a little bit of traffic to spice up this battle a little bit, and that's exactly what we've got. And so yeah, hopefully that can change up the race just a little bit for these two. They're being caught ever so slightly by De Vries behind, who is closing slowly, 1.8, 1.7 seconds, as Mohammed Patel getting noticeably closer now. Half a second between the two, then they go through 3 and 4, and their traffic is upon them very soon.
Yeah, traffic's going to be a big factor as we get towards the later parts in this race, as the gaps spread out. You can see we're already lapped down to about 14th place there at the moment, as D'Alessandro comes into the pit lane. So we need to see also where he's going to come out, because if the guys stay out for a few more laps, as Patel goes into the wall there. A bit of contact with one of the lap cars as well. Very lucky not to have a big accident there. But we need to see where D'Alessandro is going to come out, because he's going to come out basically a lap down, as now De Vries is going to get a run on Patel to get back into that second place, which he does. So Patel's going to be ruin that mistake just a little bit, as he loses loads of time as he gets off the racing line, as well as he's now got a car coming down his inside, which I believe is actually Jonas Raivio there, getting up into the top. I was about to say up into the top 3, but then he comes into the pit lane fully locked up, but manages to get it slowed down.
Don't need those tyres anymore, and just as well, because he's flat spotted those tyres greatly going into the pit lane. It's giving Liam Duval a 3-second lead, a little bit more than that as well right now, but not too much longer until he's going to be pitting in. That was Sean Jones, by the way, getting in the way a little bit, spicing up that battle for us. Mohammed Patel lost a lot of time in that battle, because he's now over 5 seconds behind Liam Duval after being really quite close behind him for the last few moments. So yeah, he's going to be not very happy indeed, as out comes Jonas Raivio, in goes Liam Duval. Very, very tricky to get the car slowed down, and he just about does it. I think he will have actually gained a bit of time on Raivio there. I think he slowed down the car a little bit later, but he definitely didn't speed on pit lane, so that was a good pit entry from the race leader.
Yeah, he's going to do good. So we're going to see now what's better, an overcut or an undercut. Is pitting first or second going to be better? We'll have to find out. Obviously, Raivio is going to be still getting up to speed when he comes out, so he's not going to be at full speed, but that's going to be the same now for Duval when he comes out for his out lap as well. So it does look to be pretty much around 40 laps for these cars, and now Jonas coming down the start-finish straight, but it's going to be such a long run with these really, really long straights. And now into turn 1, Duval now coming into turn 2. I think that Duval is going to be able to hold on to this, and as you say, Raivio might have been a little bit too cautious on the pit entry, but he is going to have this overspeed all the way down to turn 3, but it looks like, at least for now, he's going to hold on to it, but we'll see when they get onto the front straight.
But that gap is smaller than it was when Radio came into the pit lane to start off this cycle at the front of the field. And by the way, I've got some sad news to bring to you as well, that Mohammed Patel, I'm afraid, has retired from the race. He is a DNF, so that's the end of the road for him, I'm afraid, after a really fantastic drive as Mark de Vries leaves the pit lane. Now these guys are going to pass him very, very easily indeed. It seems that the undercut is a lot more powerful than the overcut around here, as we were expecting, as Liam Duval and Eunice Rabio resume 1 and 2, but they're a lot closer than they were before. A little bit of lap traffic coming out of the pit lane, but that doesn't matter. Eunice Rabio looks like he's going to head down the inside and probably take the race lead as well, although a lap car in the way, nearly 3 wide coming through turn 3. They continue side by side in this battle. Rabio on the inside. Somehow Duval is holding it around the outside right now, but he's going to have to yield finally. That was a very close moment.
I thought that was going to be a huge crash with that lapped car getting in the way, which is really not what you want to see, especially on the inside of turn 3. It just seems to be a tiny bit more bumpy than some of the other corners. It just seems to be that little bit harder with the way it works out around this track. And they were very, some would say lucky, but also skillful to get through that one.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look at Mohammed Patel then. Does he bin it going into the pit lane? Or is it just a normal retirement? Locking up from the car in front, and it's a spin around, front wing off. And I'm afraid that is the end of Mohammed Patel's day. It was such a great drive from him, but I'm afraid it's all come to an end. Rabio and Duval continue on though, getting past more lap traffic, and Rabio back in the lead after winning last week's race at Portland in the StockCar Challenge. It's now the rF250 that he is leading.
Yeah, still just over half the race to go though, so that is quite, and obviously we saw with the undercut as well, that was quite an important factor, and because of where they, as we said, where they pitted, they got a lot of play with that final pit stop. So now Duval does have that opportunity to come back in the final pit stop, as well as obviously coming back. And oh no, Mohammed Patel does not want to see this. A nice slow-mo replay, and you'll see that the rear is just going to lock up. You, from my experience, you really have to sort of keep on the throttle a little bit, and not fully go on the brakes. You have to be so careful on the brakes, but you've got to keep the bit on the throttle to stop the rear brakes locking. But in that case, he obviously just made a small mistake there, but quite a costly error.
Yeah, absolutely, very, very costly indeed. I'm afraid it's put an end to his race, and he's the third retirement from the 24 starters that we've had earlier today for the rF250. So a real shame for Mohammed Patel, who really could have been up there with these guys inside the top 3. Certainly, Mark de Vries is starting to fall away, really. 6 seconds between himself and Liam Duval at the moment. But yeah, you're right, there's a real lot of play in the strategy with these guys right now. I guess the pit window opens in 15 laps, and they could pit then if they wanted to and do a bit of an undercut there. I'm not entirely sure if somebody is going to go for that, because catching a code 200 would pretty much win you the race if one of them pitted and the other one didn't. So you might want to stay out just in case there is a code 200 for an accident that could well happen out here at the moment. But equally, we saw how powerful that undercut is, and it just really depends, I think, how hard Liam Duval is going to have to try to get through here. Is it going to be impossible for him to get through? And if so, then pitting early seems a very good choice. But if these guys can easily draft past each other, then there seems no point in taking the risk of pitting early.
Duval seems to be quite an oval specialist, though. I remember in the race all-star stuff that happened last year, he was, I can't remember if he won a race, but he was definitely on sort of the podium there. And then in the FSR Indy Pro race about 6 months ago now, he was also on the podium that day as well. So around this track, especially in these cars, he seems to be a bit of a master, as we've now seen Apolloni go down the inside of Ciara, and then they're going to be side by side as we get towards turn 4, but it seems that Ciara just got enough pace on the outside there for 5th position. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if Duval is fighting for the lead all the way to the end, as they've now dropped de Vries by over 6 seconds.
Yeah, absolutely. That is a big gap right now as they go through turn 1. Once again, Ciara versus Apolloni. These two have been very, very close inside of the top there. It's allowing Hutchinson to get involved as well. He's about 2.5 seconds behind this little battle that's going on at the moment. So we could indeed be seeing 3 cars involved in this battle for what is now 5th place in this race. But yeah, we're approaching half distance already. It's flown by, to be honest. There's been a lot of racing going on, as I'm afraid we've got another retirement further down the order. Andre, who was losing a lot of places a little bit earlier on. We saw a perfect demonstration of really, when you get pushed offline once, you tend to lose not one but many more positions than that, and he was a prime example of that. I'm afraid his race has finally come to an end.
As Alvarez there getting a penalty, which is not what you want to do, as going through the pit lane even without pit stop really just costs you best part of a lap, and that is pretty much game over in terms of getting a top result, as we're now seeing these guys get up the field a little bit, but they've got a back marker in front of them as Rivio there sets a 39.398, which is actually faster than the fastest qualifying time that there was. So that is a remarkable lap, to be honest, from Rivio. He's really starting to pull out all the stops at the front, and he's got a very quick car underneath him as well.
Yeah, he absolutely has, and that wouldn't have just clipped the qualifying time. It would have been good 7/100ths of a second, which is quite a lot around here. So very impressive pace being shown by Eunice Rabiot at the moment. I'm not entirely sure what on earth happened to Darius Andre on that time, but completely lost the car in a big way. And that looks like quite heavy suspension damage even before this. So I think there's a bit of a precursor to this accident, actually. It almost looks intentional from outside, didn't it? But we could saw on the outside, on the onboard shot, that car had quite bad suspension damage, and it looked near uncontrollable, actually.
Yeah, he was steering a lot more than normal. The cars do naturally steer right just a tiny bit, as you see from Apolloni. That is purely because of the way the geometry is as well. So most of the cars sort of naturally do it. So when you're turning left in the corners, you're not actually physically turning the wheel left as much. So it's a bit easier on the hands. But for Andre there, it was way more extreme. So he obviously had some suspension damage, and something was a little bit tweaked. But Ciara here managed to get that 5th position, but he's actually starting to pull away now. So Apolloni's just dropped back a tiny bit. But Ciara, if he does pull away, is going to be in a bit of a gap on his own, because there's 8 seconds ahead of him.
Yeah, he is going to be a little bit on his own. Well, they're not as on his own as Velthoff is at the moment, with 8 seconds in front and 8 seconds behind right now. So, he could do with the company, I suspect. It certainly seems a little bit faster than Apolloni at this moment in time. I think Ciara qualified a little bit better, actually, 10th place for him. And Apolloni started down in 17th, and to say that he's all the way up to 6th place after starting 17th, that's a very good drive from him, because let's not forget, I reckon the bottom 10, 11 drivers were caught up in that accident that we saw on lap 1. So Apolloni must have been at least in that vicinity, in that kind of area. So he must have avoided that and got himself through inside nearly the top 5 at the moment, knocking on the door of a top 5. I think it's a fantastic drive from him.
Yeah, it certainly would be a really good opportunity, but we just jump back to the front here, and Eunice Rivio has now got an over 5-second lead from Liam Duval. He is really starting to pull away. So as a car there in the background has had quite a big accident, as Caneo gets another penalty. But yeah, over 5 seconds, almost 6 seconds now, as Keersmakers is the one who had that accident. So Rivio's really starting to pull away.
Seems that he's got a fair amount of suspension damage as well as look at that car crabbing, and don't like to see that weaving, and he's oh my goodness, what a great avoidance. I think that was Apolloni, as into the wall goes Keersmakers again, and trying to keep control of that car, but the suspension damage is so difficult to deal with here. I mean, it's quite difficult in a normal car to have to deal with suspension damage, especially on the rear, but when you've got strange geometry around here that's not quite straight, because you only really want to be going left around the corners, it's not quite straight, the geometry, as you were mentioning, as you've explained earlier on. So it really does make a lot of a difference, especially when you've got suspension damage. It's almost impossible to control. That's exactly what we're seeing there. And unfortunately, it nearly caused an accident, I believe, for Apolloni, who had to do a great job of avoiding that.
And this has let one of the drivers we pretty much haven't mentioned the whole race, Mark Hutchinson, now getting up towards this 6th place. He's now getting in that slipstream. I think Apolloni lost a bit of time there on that previous lap, having to try and get out of it, as we're going to see probably a not very nice replay of what's going to happen with Vincent Keersmakers. Big contact there on the exit of turn 1.
Yeah, just understeering and clipping that wall, bounces him across the circuit, and then he's going to hit the inside wall with the side and then the outside wall again for the third time, and that will do a lot of damage. Here he is on the outside as well, just trying to get used to this suspension damage. There goes the race leader and almost immediately spins around. That's quite close for Yunus Rabia, and he might have seen that in his rearview mirror, puffing out his cheeks as well, because if that had happened 2 seconds earlier, that spin, then we may well have had a new race leader in Liam Duval, because there was no way Rabia was going to change course at that point in the corner.
Yeah, that is a bit of a sketchy situation, but it seems that on the tower he's managed to get back to the pit lane, and hopefully he can get himself back out there with still just over 40 laps to go. But we came back to this battle for 6th and 7th. Seems Hutchinson sort of lost that momentum a little bit. He's not able to close up so much, but I think he's going to be able to at least challenge. Mark's got a lot of experience with oval racing. He runs his own sort of annual oval race with some of his mates, I know. So he's got quite a lot of experience with this, so he knows, he should know at least, how to race these cars. But it seems that he doesn't quite have that momentum to get on the back of Apolloni at the moment.
Let's have another look at a replay for Alejandro Lopez, who has tried to go into the pit lane right now. I think we're going to see once again one of the difficulties of getting in, and that is the opposite of what we've seen so far. We saw people were slowing down a little bit too early, but that one looked a little bit too late, and I think that's going to be a penalty for Lopez. After that one, it did look to me as if he was speeding getting on pit lane then.
Yes, potentially for him, but someone who's speedy on the track is Yunus Rabia. 8-second lead now to Liam Duval. This is quite remarkable. Considering, I was trying to think how maybe he's doing this. I thought maybe he could have underfueled the car, but then I think he would have gained a lot more time during that pit stop sequence. He didn't seem to gain that much. Maybe the odd second here or there. Not, the multiple seconds that it would have been. So not quite sure. Maybe he's just quicker at this point in the race, but he's certainly managing to work it out, because he's absolutely romping off in the distance.
I'm not so sure that it's not Liam Duval falling away a little bit at the moment, because if you look at Mark De Vries right now, he's also falling back from Rabia, but he is catching Duval at the same time. That gap's under 3 seconds now. It was closer to 6 when De Vries came out of the pit lane. So I'm not so sure that Liam Duval is losing a little bit of pace right now. I'm not entirely sure why that's the case, or what's going on with that, but yeah, he seems to slowly be falling back, and Velthoven is also catching De Vries right now. The gap was 8 seconds not so long ago. It's down to just under 6 at the moment, so some gaps are starting to stretch out just a little bit. A lot of gaps closing in as well. Lots of battles to be watching a little bit later on, but yeah, some people seemingly struggling a little bit right now.
Something I just remember though, Duval actually bonked the walls a couple of times, didn't he? So I wonder if now that he isn't in the lead and he can't control the pace, I do wonder if that damage is starting to hinder his speed as well, because even De Vries has actually caught up quite a few seconds to him over the course of the stint so far. So I do think maybe that is a factor, because I don't believe we've seen Rabia go into the wall, at least on our screens, as we jump back to Hutchinson, and he's really getting in the slipstream now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you might be right there on Liam Duval, and he's into the pit lane. That seemingly backs up your theory, because he wouldn't do this otherwise, surely. This is going to be a shorter pit stop than we saw before, but it's going to be a big undercut as well, so we'll wait and see where he comes out in about 20 laps time when this pit stop cycle has ended. But this is the closest battle out there on the circuit at the moment, Alessandro Apolloni versus Mark Hutchinson, but you just saw how difficult it is to overtake there. How much he gained in the slipstream there, Hutchinson, is nowhere near what he just lost in the dirty air. It's quite substantial, the dirty air, but then the slipstream itself is quite substantial as well. So the gaps really do elongate and then close up again, as you can see in the top left-hand side of your screen. Any hopes of winning this race now for Liam Duval surely are gone. He's got a penalty. I think that may well have been speeding in the pit lane.
Yeah, which is probably a drive-through penalty, so he's going to lose himself a fair amount of time with that one. However, he can get to the end of the race from here. So if he stays to the end of the race, then he might end up getting a penalty, or basically serving the penalty after the race. But I think that may end up being sort of either a 30-second or a 1-lap penalty, so that probably won't help his situation. too much. So he's probably just going to have to serve it, and then he'll be down somewhere near probably Bala or Edo in 8th or 9th place as Duval comes back into the pit lane to serve it once again. So that is not ideal for him. At one point we were talking about him winning the race, but instead he's not going to be doing that as Rivio comes in as well. So I wonder if maybe he's doing this in reaction to Duval, even though he obviously probably wouldn't know that I think Duval was pitting maybe for damage.
Yeah, I think you might be right on that one. With the fact that Rabio won't have known that he's sped in the pit lane, or won't have known necessarily about the damage. I think he did come in early to cover Duval off there, because we saw in the first stint how much an undercut actually gains you. So I think it would have been a smart decision. It looks a little bit strange now for Rabio, admittedly. However, he's just trying to cover off Duval really, and I don't think he can be faulted for that. So out he comes in 8th place. Edu not so far behind him, but Rabio surely in control of this race now. Unless there's a code 200 De Vries can catch, and then he would be in the lead by quite some margin. I can't see Rabio losing this race. He's just got to keep it clean from this point, and he should have it.
Yeah, he certainly should, but shoulda, coulda, woulda is actually quite a important thing for this race, really. The amount of times that we've seen some people, I believe in real life, Sato, there was a race, I think it was like 2013 or something, where he crashed on either the last or the penultimate lap, and then he's gone on to win it twice since then as well. So loads of things like that. As Duval gets another penalty, serving his penalty, so he I think we'll probably see the end of his race fairly shortly with that one. But yeah, this track, it just bites you, and you see some people get lucky, some people don't. Sometimes it's good strategy, and sometimes you just make a tiny mistake and that's it. But that's why it is one of the sort of better races that we have in the calendar.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very challenging race indeed, and I'm afraid the challenge has become a little bit too much for Liam Duval. He's retired the car after the incidents and the issues with speeding onto pit lane and off of pit lane. I think it was last time he was in the pit lane, but he's retired that car now. I'm afraid here he is coming into pit lane, sliding it in and just about avoiding the wall. It looked pretty close from here, hard to tell really, but just look at this, how close he gets to the wall. In the end, it's not quite as close as I thought, although there is another jink to the right, and it's fairly close. Goes through that board on the right hand side. It might have actually been a small touch there, hard to tell, it doesn't really matter to him now. He's out of the race, and he's going to be dropping down the order. A real shame to see, these things do happen, especially at Indianapolis.
And Rivio's got to be careful here. There's a code 200, and these guys can make their final pit stop, then he's going to be in a tricky situation, along with the fact he's actually going to have to do obviously a longer stint towards the end of the race as well. So he needs to be a little bit careful with that, but obviously there's not much he can do. To be honest, he just needs to go quick. But Mark De Vries now leading the race from Veldhoven, who we're watching at the moment. 4 seconds is the gap, and then quite a big one. Another 14 seconds back to Apolloni as Hutchinson gets past Ciara, so I think Ciara's going to be coming into the pit lane, which he does. So we're getting into that pit stop phase now for the final round. As we mentioned, you have a bit of flexibility with this final pit stop, so some guys are starting to go a bit earlier to get their pit stop out of the way. But then obviously that means you might be a little bit more vulnerable with tyres at the end of the race. So for these guys staying out, we need to see if that one's going to work.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there will be people who run it right out to lap 80, which is the latest lap we expect to see anybody into the pit lanes. We see what we expect to be the race leader, Eunice Rabio, getting quite close to the wall coming up turn 2, but getting past another lap car there more importantly. And some other cars into the pit lane at the moment. Interestingly as well, Michele D'Alessandro in this battle for what is now third place is really starting to catch up to Alessandro Apolloni and Mark Hutchinson as well, so that's a free car battle that will continue on. But let's have a look at Jake Dennehan, because he is now out of the race, I'm afraid. How on earth did this happen? Out of turn 4, just goes a little bit too wide, tried to get it into the pit lane, head-on collision with the barriers. That was hefty, and I'm afraid he is now out of the race as well.
Yeah, that's not the Yeah, that's not the nicest nice accent that Jake Denham will ever have in his career. I was just speaking to him before the race, and he said the longest, he's done quite a few of these Indy 250s, but the longest he ever got was to lap 11. So he's done a little bit longer, but if you remember, he was actually one of the first people to sort of crash and be a lap down at the beginning of the race. So unfortunately, this one hasn't ended any better, really, for him.
No, and that just shows really the challenge of these races. Actually getting to the end is almost an achievement in itself, even though it's only 100 laps. As we're on board with Sierra at the moment, we might be about to see an example of that. Hard hit into the wall for Sierra, running inside of the top 5 for the last, what feels like 20 laps, 30 laps, 40 laps maybe. It could even be longer than that. He's been in there for such a long time, but now I'm afraid Sierra 2 laps down. That was a hard hit on the wall, and another example of when the rear gets away from you in these cars, there really is no saving it. The only thing that can save you is the barriers, but I'm afraid you are going to pay the price for that.
Yeah, the barriers are so unforgiving. You can't be making even little mistakes, to be honest. It's such a difficult situation to be in. As you're now seeing Hutchinson come in for his final pit stop. Yeah, very difficult track, so difficult to keep it on that racing line, but you see just the tiniest of mistake and you always end up in the wall and losing some time there, so you've got to be careful. But we're now seeing DNFs all the way up to P15 and some other guys many laps down as well, so it's certainly been an attritional race. But what can you expect when you come to a sort of unusual situation? As we mentioned, over racing isn't really the biggest thing on rFactor 2, but I'm sure as more races and more competitions are formed with it, people will sort of get more used to it and then eventually be a lot more comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, especially in European circles, it's not really used as much. I know the Americans are pretty big on their oval racing, and over on other services they do a lot of it. But it's not really used very much by Europeans, really, and it's a bit of a shame. But it's just about what you grow up with, really, isn't it? We don't often grow up watching much oval racing here in Europe, so it's a bit of a shock to the system sometimes when you step into one of these cars for the first time, or you do an oval race for the first time. It's a strange feeling, really, as we see another replay. Hopefully, it's not a replay of complete misery for somebody. Down the inside for Remco de Zeeuw. Into turn 1, but understeer City, I'm afraid, going through that corner, and this accident carrying on all the way through turn 2. I mean, these cars, just as you said earlier, get geared for understeer, but you don't really want any oversteer either, because we've seen how that can end. So you're really balancing on a nice edge, and taking a narrow line into corners like that can lead you to a lot of understeer, big push to the outside, and I'm afraid into the barriers as well.
Yeah, once you get off the line, it's so difficult. As you mentioned, you've seen quite a lot of guys fall accustomed to that, especially just understeering out wide. But now we come on board with Michele D'Alessandro. He's getting on the back of Apolloni now. He's been a little bit quiet in that middle part of the race. He was doing a bit better in that first half, but he's now getting himself the opportunity to get on the podium. He's got no real pressure from behind or ahead. It's just this gap and this battle that he needs to focus on for third position, and he's doing a decent job at the moment, but he just needs to get that run, get that momentum out of one of these corners, and he should be able to get that slipstream.
Yeah, absolutely, it's all about momentum. Getting that through one of these corners to get that run is all you need. But let's not forget, pit stops are not too far away from these guys. They can't go much longer on fuel, and we'll be able to see very shortly whose strategy has worked out, as Michele D'Alessandro does indeed now come into the pit lane. He slows down in good time for the pit lane entry, and now we'll see what Alessandro Apolloni can do. Maybe just D'Alessandro was trying to avoid this, which is a little bit of traffic that Apolloni is having to negotiate right now, and you can you can bet, that Apolloni has lost quite a fair amount of time stuck behind these couple of cars, so it might have been a very smart decision from the 2017 FSR World Champion.
Yeah, he's getting himself in a very good position here. We've already seen that the undercut is very powerful. Does Apolloni respond? No, he stays out, so he's probably going to stay out as long as he can to empty the tank, but I don't know if that's going to be good enough to hold on to this position. As we mentioned, that undercut seems to be very good indeed, but you can just see here D'Alessandro coming out of the pit lane, and he is basically going to be a lap down with how it works. So he needs to be careful not to lose time with traffic now that he's on the complete other side of the track.
He also needs to be careful that there isn't a full course caution while he's out here, because that will certainly lose him the place, and a few more as well to those who have stayed out, although there are only 3 right now: Mark de Vries and Velterhove and Alessandro Apolloni, 2 of which are on your screen right now, this triple screen display thing we have going on right now. De Vries a little bit slow out of the second turn there, but I think he managed to keep it all out of the wall and all okay. Getting a little bit more traffic, I'm afraid, into turn 3 and 4, but now surely he's going to be into the pit lane at either this lap or the next lap, certainly very shortly anyway, trying to manage the dirty air through some of these corners. Very, very tricky indeed, and he is being caught at the moment by Velterhove, who's starting to reel him in, and they were both reeling in develop, and unfortunately we're not going to be able to watch a 3-car battle that was developing, but hopefully we'll see the battle between de Vries and Velterhove develop in the next few moments as Alessandro Apolloni finally comes into the pit lane right now. We'll see where he comes out in relation to D'Alessandro in a couple of minutes.
D'Alessandro's had such a good run on these couple of laps, getting past the traffic on that previous lap really nicely as well. Apolloni being held up. I wouldn't be surprised, to be honest, if D'Alessandro is just going to fly past him, as we've seen also just getting up to speed on that back straight. You can always the gap looks a bit bigger until you get to turn 3 when they really close down. So now we're going to see what happens as de Vries comes into the pit lane as well. Apolloni's coming through turn 1 now, but obviously D'Alessandro has basically doubled the speed of him, and that is going to continue as we come around. And I think D'Alessandro is going to have so much overspeed here, he's going to be able to get past him. So Apolloni is going to lose this position as he gets up to speed, and he's going to be quite a few car lengths, even maybe over a second behind him as we get to turn 3.
And also the battle for the lead is now settled as well, with Junius Rabio in the middle of your screen getting through on Mark de Vries, and that was very easy indeed as well. Rabio did this initially, we believe anyway, to cover off Liam Duval, who pitted early in this race, and he's absolutely covered off all of his opponents in this race. Also Wilbert Velterhove gets around the outside, and with the overspeed gets into second place. What a fantastic drive from Velterhove so far in this race, and he gets in front of de Vries right now. I bet Mark de Vries wasn't expecting that when he came into the pit lane.
Yeah, probably not indeed, but it seems that some of these guys now sort of work themselves out into their slots, so we need to see how that one is going to now work out with the battles in this final stint. But it also seems that Hutchinson managed to jump D'Alessandro and all of that as well, so yeah, some good battles I think are going to form as we get well into this final 20 laps now.
Yeah, absolutely. We are getting into the closing stages of this race, and we'll be able to see now, with the slightly newer tyres that Mark de Vries has got, what can he do with them in catching Wilbert Velterhove, and can he make any impression on him when he does indeed get there, as by the way Hutchinson is just out in front of Apolloni, D'Alessandro at the moment, and those two positions have just changed away from our carriers from the last few moments. So D'Alessandro into 4th place, and considering where he was not so long ago, that really is a very impressive drive from him indeed. He started 9th, fell down further than that, and now he's back up inside the top 4.
He's done a good job there to get back past, so seems that Hutchinson maybe can't quite hold on to that one, but he's still done a decent job actually from the starting position. But now there's such a big gap to de Vries, this battle is probably not going to extend any further than that, as they are going to struggle to catch up that gap to de Vries in the last few laps. But you never know, someone ahead might make a bit of a mistake, so getting yourself in the position anyway for that is certainly going to help them.
And well, I believe I saw some position changing going on between de Vries and Velterhove there, but they're in the same positions again now, with de Vries still in front of Velterhove, so they're still running 2nd and 3rd, 16, 17 seconds ahead, and here is the battle going on. 16 laps to go when they get to the line, and they are catching Rabio fairly quickly. There must be a bit of traffic going on at the moment, because they were nearly 11 seconds down a couple of corners ago, but now it's down to 9 already, so let's hope Rabio's kept it out of the barriers. But Velterhove now, big run out of turn 4, down the inside he goes. He's got to watch the understeer here, make sure he doesn't drift up into the outside wall or into the car on the outside. Expertly done, measures the speed very well. Mark De Vries gave him the room to breathe, and that was a nice battle between them.
They swap positions in this battle a few times. It looks actually De Vries there lifting off a little bit, maybe trying to do a bit of fuel saving, or maybe just realizing that he doesn't want to battle too much at the moment, and he's going to try and get a run now onto the front straightaway. He's having a bit of a good line now, actually, as Veltov goes a little bit wide. Maybe have to get out of it just a tiny bit more than De Vries, as he's now getting the slipstream once again, although he's actually lifting off. So he's decided that he doesn't want to do this battle and wants to try and hold on to this position for now.
Yeah, it does indeed. So it's an interesting fight between the two of them. And I don't know what's happening to Eunice Rabia at the moment, to be honest, because gap's now down to 8.6 seconds and it continues to fall. But Mark De Vries now straight down the inside he goes into turn 3, and Wilbert Velthoff falls behind again. I have a feeling that this is going to happen for pretty much the rest of this race. They're just going to trade places. It's going to be a good fight between them, and I can't honestly decide whether he'd want to be behind going on to the final lap or in front.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, really. I think if you have a bit of a gap, then you might want to be in that first position. But if the gap is so close like these guys are, you probably want to be in second place, actually, as you come onto that final lap. As now Veltov is getting the slipstream. Is he going to return the favour? No, he's just going to lift off a little bit, and Ruben, our wonderful broadcast director, has just actually informed me that in another series, these guys are actually teammates as well. So they are potentially working together a little bit. They're not really going to help themselves too much. They are catching Rivio just a little bit. Is he going to be fast enough to get into the end? I'm not quite sure, but maybe they're just helping them get that fuel number at least to the end of the race.
It certainly seems to make sense, actually, that these two might be working together, because they're not being particularly aggressive with each other, even though they are battling at the moment, as we see Michele D'Alessandro's move on Mark Hutchinson to get up into 4th place. Down the inside he goes, and that was the move into turn 3. Nice and easy for him. But yeah, those two in 2nd and 3rd, De Vries and Velthoff, are starting to catch Eunice Rabia ever so slightly. The gap was about 11 seconds at the start of this stint. It's down to just over 7. But are they catching quick enough? Are we going to see another grandstand finish here in the rFactor 2 Summer Showdown? We saw a fantastic finish to the StockCar Challenge last week between Eunice Rabia and Nuno Pinto, who were battling right down to the very final corner in that race. Are we going to see something similar at the rF250? It's going to take a big effort from these two to get there, and they are going to need to work together if they are indeed doing that right now.
Yeah, I think if they wanted it properly, they're going to have to let the car basically slipstream and jump ahead, because when you just lift off, you're then basically limited by the speed of the car ahead, whereas if you sort of slipstream overtake, then the other guy comes back again on the next straight and all that, then you're effectively gaining time with the slipstream. But now sending it down the inside as Velthoff gets into 2nd place. I wonder what lap they're going to stop sort of working and maybe then fighting for the position. But either way, Velthoff has now got that position. But once again, De Vries is going to come back. So if they really wanted to gain time, then De Vries probably should have sent it there into turn 3. So I think they're just having a bit of a controlled battle to make sure they're not having any crazy moments towards the end of the race. But a little bit further down, it does look pretty good for the guys behind us. A bit of a moment there as we hit 10 laps to go. But De Vries, once again, lifting off a little bit. So D'Alessandro's now pulled away from Hutchinson, and Hutchinson's got a bit of a gap from Apolloni, so those top 6 are looking fairly nice, but the gaps behind him have really started to spread out over this second half of the race, and there's quite a few drivers a lap down now.
Yeah, there are only 7 cars on the lead lap right now, and expected to be 6 actually by the time we reach this race ends. But this time last lap, Mark De Vries really did have quite a moment coming through turn 4. I said earlier on that when you get oversteer in these cars, there's absolutely no way of saving it. Well, Mark De Vries has just put that statement in the coffin, really, because that was a fantastic save. A little bit of opposite lock, not too much, just a little bit, just to help him around there, and really fantastic save from a very twitchy moment, and what could have been a very disastrous moment for him, actually. He managed to save it as we go on board with the top 3 right now. What impression are these guys making? Velthoff and De Vries, are they making any impression on the leader, Eunice Rabia? Even if they are, I have a feeling that it's going to be too little too late.
Yeah, it might just be at least to get that battle for the victory at least, but they can certainly fight between themselves, and that is going to be good enough for those two. I'm sure they're going to be happy to get on the podium if they can complete these final couple of laps. And it seems like De Vries now just lifting off once again, but he's getting to that important stage now where you don't want to make that final error, and that gap between them has actually between Veldhoven and Rivio has actually stabilised just a little bit over the last 5 laps or so.
Yeah, absolutely, it has indeed. As De Vries goes down the inside of Veldhoven now into turn 3 with 7 laps to go at the line. De Vries is back in front once again. 7.4 seconds is the gap, and they are starting to catch ever so slightly, and Veldhoven is reminded once again at the dirty air that you get coming through turn 4 when you're following another car like he is right now. And it's a cruel reminder. Wasn't able to really stay as close as he might have wanted to there, and it falls away just a little bit. But Mark De Vries now has got a small gap, and we'll see if he can hold on to it. It is going to be a very, very close race to the end between these two. I feel like we're going to see a battle right to the end with these two now, and these two cars seemingly very, very well matched. They're very, very close on pace. We mentioned, or we were told, that they are teammates, and they do often work together in other championships around the world, of course. So, it may well be that these two are working together now, or at least sharing a setup, quite possibly. And they were working together, but it doesn't look like much working together going on right now, because De Vries keeps weaving around and looks more defensive when Veldhoven is on the back of him.
Yeah, I think they are certainly they're fighting, but they're just trying to make sure that they're also getting to the end. As in front of Rivio, there's the slow car. He's got to be careful, but you could easily lose a lot of time there to these guys, because he's now going to spend the next lap or so getting back up to pace. So someone smoking their engine, just running the radiator a little bit too small for the 100 laps needed to complete this race. And as Rivio crosses the line, he's only got a few laps left before he can get himself and call himself a double Summer Showdown winner. 5 laps to go indeed. He won the race last week in stock cars. He's now come to a completely different type of racing, and he's also back at the front. So if you remember correctly, there's another race, the 3rd race at the Nürburgring in 2 weeks' time, and we'll have to see if he can get a 3rd win there. But back to this race in Veldhoven now. He's only got 4 laps left. Can he get a run and get that 2nd place?
It's going to be very close. Veldhoven weaving to get the slipstream of De Vries down into turn 1. Is there going to be a late move? God, that was very close. And if he did sneak his nose down the inside, then there could well have been contact between those two, because there's not much space as you go through there. But props to both of them for keeping that one clean. Rivio gets through on another one of those cars, and by the way, the car blowing up in front of Rivio on the last lap was Sean Jones, who's in the pit lane right now, I'm afraid from 14th position. But this is a fantastic fight now between Mark De Vries and Wilbert Veldhoven. 3 laps to go when they get to the line, and I feel like the next opportunity the Veldhoven may well be on the 2nd to last or the very last lap, and it may well be his one and only chance to get through in the remainder of this race.
It might just well be, and they have caught Rivio by a couple of seconds, but I don't think it's going to be enough for a win. So it's going to be Veldhoven versus De Vries for this 2nd place. They are pretty comfortable now for the podium, as there's only, as we mentioned, 2 laps to go at the end of this one. But who is it going to be, Veldhoven or De Vries? Veldhoven had a really big run coming into turn 1. Is he going to be able to do it this time? He's going to have a big dive, with it. He's actually understeering there quite a bit in turn 4. So it might not be a run to turn 1, but he needs to try and get that momentum down into turn 3.
Yeah, he just seems to have good runs, and he does seem to have good pace in that car. A lot of slipstream as well, but not quite using it in the right areas to get through, and just understeering, as you say, through turns 3 and 4 actually on that last lap, not giving him the best of runs into the next overtaking opportunities. But Rivio now has only got 6 corners remaining in this race. Just a lap and a half to go for him, as we're on board with Veldhoven in the top right hand side of your screen. It's going to be a grandstand finish between those two, but a lap of honour for Yunus Rivio.
And as Rivio starts his final lap, we're going to see Veldhoven now, his final opportunity into turn number 1. 4 corners to go in the race. Is he going to be able to do it? He's going to have to get the slipstream. He's getting it into turn 1. but now he needs to make sure he doesn't understeer through 1 and 2. And that will make sure he is going to be close enough to try and get the run down into turn 3. Is he going to be close enough? I think De Vries might actually have enough to hold on to that one. And we can't lose focus off Rivio as well, because he's going to call himself a 2-time winner in this Summer Showdown. He won the first race in the stock cars, and now coming to the IndyCars on an oval, he's managed to do it once again, and he takes his second victory in this series, and he is being very dominant in the Summer Showdown by Traction.gg. Mark De Vries holds on to second place, Veltholf in third place as well. So Eunice, awesome job there. Really good pace, really good strategy, can't take anything away from him. And with Deval making that mistake earlier, it just meant that was all too easy for Rivio, as D'Alessandro gets into fourth place, and unfortunately has a big crash there on the in-lap. Let's hope he is okay after that one. Mark Hutchinson gets into fifth, Apolloni in sixth, Bala in seventh, and then we go to some people one lap down with Hakimi, Shara and Edo rounding out the top 10. But Ewan, that was certainly a different form of racing, and there's certainly some potential for some great oval racing in the future, but I think there's a few people who still need to get a little bit more comfortable with it.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of people who won't be very comfortable and won't have the experience of some others, but Rivio ends up winning this one. There isn't a championship standings for the rF2 Summer Showdown, but having won the first 2 races, he would have been the championship leader, and would probably be a little bit disappointed that there aren't any standings. But there's your full results in all their glory. Rivio winning out in the end. De Vries just about holding off from Veltholf, who was just very, very close behind, but not quite able to get through right at the end. Good battles going on up and down the field, though, and mostly clean racing as well, which is what we like to see.
Yeah, there was a lot of clean racing. A lot of the accidents were sort of one car or single car accidents, which is nice. Unfortunately, some people did get collected, especially on that big crash in turn 2 on the first lap. But as you say, there's some really good battling there, especially at the end between Veltholf and De Vries and some other drivers as well. D'Alessandro getting a nice clean pass on Hutchinson as well. Apolloni will be disappointed to let Hutchinson and D'Alessandro through there in that final stint of the race. We see in the background there Rivio getting some nice donuts as well, and he has certainly done well at Indianapolis. But that is not it for the Summer Showdown. In a couple of weeks' time, we will be heading to the Nürburgring Nordschleife for a 60-minute race there in the GT3. So do keep your eye out on the competition system to get yourself involved with the qualification for that series, which is going to be happening on the weekdays prior to that race. So do keep your eye out on that during the week prior to the race, which will be happening on the 12th of June in 2 weeks' time at 1800 CST. So that has been it here from Indianapolis, and we thank you for watching, and until the Nürburgring, we wish you a very warm goodbye.